We're live, Warden Danielson.
Good afternoon, members of council and those members of the public who are tuning in to our special meeting to discuss the draft shoreline preservation bylaw. I think it'll be interesting to see where we land at the end of our discussion. But I think we can all agree that that County Council is working hard and committed to working hard to try and develop a draft that will work and is fair. And we're prepared to take whatever time is required to do that and to do it to everyone's satisfaction to the greatest extent that we can. For this particular meeting, I'm hoping that we can agree on a consultation and communications plan process, that we can agree on a process for a set of Coles notes and or Q&As for the public and for Wade in to help provide some clarity on, because there's obviously a lot of, I wouldn't say miscommunication, but misunderstandings. And agree on a process to consult, special interest groups that need to be consulted during this process. I know that we've all had incredible amounts of email and with all sorts of thoughts and ideas or just thoughts. And I would ask Charlesy to have patience with us, forgive us, because we have heard an awful lot. We've got thoughts and ideas that we'd like to see incorporated into the process, and we want to try and get it right. So having said that, I would ask our clerk to do a roll call.
Councillor Moffat.
Present.
Councillor Danielson.
Present.
Warden Danielson, I'm sorry. Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Burton.
Present.
Councillor Ryle.
Present.
Councillor DeVolen.
Present.
And Councillor Schell.
Present.
And could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? Councillor Schell, Councillor Burton.
Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Councillor Burton. Be it resolved that the agenda for the January 27th, 2021 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be hereby approved.
All in favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Hearing none, we will invite our planner in and start approaching each one of these plans that she's put forward for us. Good afternoon, Charlesy.
Good afternoon, Warden and members of County Council.
So we'll first talk about your communications plan.
Thank you. So I've provided a report, as well as attached to that report is a draft communications plan, which has been presented to County Council previous. Just a little background, last County Committee of the Whole, I was asked to provide information to County Council for review, the information being what would be presented to the public as part of the consultation and moving forward with getting public input on a draft plan. Some of this information is the bylaw itself, as well as some schedules, but also information in relation to, we have a 4-page kind of summary on the impact of the draft bylaw and what it means. And last year in February 2020, we had a conversation about public consultation. And at that point, this was before the current public health situation, we had talked about some in-person meetings and other ways in which to engage the public. So the draft plan that is before you today takes into consideration that, at this point in time, those types of public meetings just are not permitted. So providing some different options and means to communicate with the public, as well as get feedback in different forms and from different groups. So what I will do is run through the draft presentation. If I could ask Mr. March to bring that up on the screen. And I will start on slide 2, which is titled Our Purpose. And I've tried to connect the purpose of the communication plan to other documents that County Council has approved or are currently in effect in the county, including the official plan, as well as the County of Haliburton's mission statement, which is in the strategic plan from last year. I guess it would be the year before with County Council. Just really trying to give a high level rationale as why a communication plan is important. And then if we move to the next page, the current state, this really outlines where we have been with the draft process to date with regards to shoreline preservation, how the County of Haliburton and our economy rely strongly on the natural environment, whether that's our lakes or rivers, resource-based recreational community that we have, and the tourism industry, as well as primary industries such as forestry and aggregate. Speaks high level to public initiation for public consultation. We did a round in 2019 through Wade In, which we received thousands of comments and participants with that process, which far exceeded any public process, at least through planning, that we have done, where we've held public open houses or public meetings. So lots of really great participation from the public there. And looking forward to 2021, in coordination with the communication plan, continuing public consultation process. To the next page, a high level outline of some of the strengths in moving forward with the communication plan, things that we should be leveraging, different means and ways to communicate, as well as reaching focused areas of the community. Some challenges with regards to social media and website presence, getting more information available that way, but also understanding that not everyone has access to that. And so trying to reach out in other ways for those who may not have the access for online. And opportunities, again, different ways to communicate. So yes, Wade In is one means, as well as public meetings are one means to engage the public. But there's also options with regards to social media, an e-bulletin, short radio clips or announcements, digital communication. And then, what challenges or threats are we going to have to this, specifically to the County of Haliburton for public consultation, costs associated with it, with regards to, staff time, printing, media costs, and then should a bylaw come into effect, obviously enforcement of that bylaw. And I will move on to the next page, some really high level objectives. Looking to create strategic communication, as well as communication that will support County Council in their decision making, so that everyone is using the same information, and then staff efforts to keep participants informed. So not just County Council, but local municipal councils and other bodies who have asked to participate, and that the County of Haliburton be the one source for information and keep those information and materials up to date as we move through the program. The next page, which is page 9, identifies stakeholders, their different levels of interest, just as noted to date, and what some of those interests or issues may be, and different communication methods based on the different stakeholders. Communication will be different with external stakeholders than it would be with, say, internal stakeholders, as well as the frequency. We don't want to bombard people with continuous emails and information, but we want them to have that information accessible for when they want to take the time to sit down and review it and or provide comment, and an easy way for them to do that that is consistent. The next page on the draft communication plan speaks to key communication methods, and I've touched on a few of these previous. I know that there's probably some additional suggestions that County Council may want to discuss today, so any suggestions could be updated and included in here. And then lastly, the work plan, high level general timelines, understanding that a public consultation through public meeting. It may take the form of one meeting or more. The weighed in, the amount of time that it takes for members of the public to participate, as well as some other significant dates that I thought County Council would like to continue to be aware of, including the upcoming construction season, tourist season. Again, in the current public health situation, online participation at this point from the public and communication with the public is currently our best option. That's not to say that it won't change in the future, but that's where we are right now. And if there's any questions or discussion on the plan, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, I personally do have some comments to make, but I would leave that to the rest of council first, starting with Councillor Moffat. I wonder if we can just put this, well, maybe, should we leave the slides up or? Okay, there we go. So Councillor Moffat, you've got some comments.
I do, thank you. I sent a long email to you last week. As you know, I am extremely frustrated with where we are on the communication piece of this and the consultation piece. I've mentioned a number of times about having a different kind of conversation, and I hope that we can somehow get to that today. We need to recalibrate this process. We need to be providing really clear answers to the questions we're getting, because we're getting the same questions a number of times, which is a very clear indication that we're not giving the public what it is they're telling us they need. So I think we need to start at the very least with an extremely comprehensive FAQ. And I think if we have more clarity ahead of the consultation, it will allow for that process to be more streamlined and will allow the public to participate well and effectively. So right now it feels a bit like a zombie apocalypse, as opposed to, people lined up, informed and willing to participate in a process. It just feels like it's all over the map. And I think if we don't continue to refine this and do a better job of reaching out with the right information that we clearly hear from the public they want to have, we are just going to continue to go in circles, and that serves no one.
Councillor Schell.
I would completely agree with Councillor Moffat. Currently, there are 224 people logged into the YouTube to watch this meeting, so it's clear that the public is engaged and interested, and I think that we owe it to them to have sort of a, this is true, this is not true. I mean, I've gotten emails where people think they can't cut their grass in the first 30 meters of their property, which is not correct. So I think we have a little bit more work to do as far as educating the public and bringing them on board with this.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us are receiving the same questions over and over again. There seems to be an overarching belief that, oh my God, my cottage is on the shore road allowance and I'm going to have to tear it down. Well, that is so far from, from what is being proposed, and that there are a lot of legacy issues associated, with the work that will be required. And I think it's clear that we're not giving the amount of clarity or information to questions that people have, and they're consistently asking the same question. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you again. I think you'll know I have a lot to say about this. When we go back to the Algonquin Highlands shoreline inspection process, we knew that we were going to be faced with a lot of questions, concerns, and, let's be honest, and objection. And at that time, I said that we should have a comprehensive FAQ. So we took all the questions that we had been receiving from the public, which I've already done for this process, by the way. There's like 67 of them, which I'm sure we can't use. But for the septic reinspection program, they were categorized into they were grouped. And on the Algonquin Highlands website, there is a really condensed list, and it was designed deliberately so that it's not crazy making for the human eye. The questions are there. When you click on them, they drop down and then go back up. So you can see all the frequently asked questions. It's so the model exists. It's been successful. We're obviously not the only ones who have done it successfully, but it was dynamic enough that as the process moved along and people had more questions, we would add them. If there was a number of them, we'd say, well, there's obviously people have a question about that part, and we would add it. So it was a continually changing FAQ, and it helped alleviate a lot of the concerns, things that people didn't understand. They could go to the FAQ and go, oh, okay, I get it. And I think in this situation, because there are a tremendous number of people, excuse me, who have questions about legacy buildings and legacy infrastructure and gardening and lawns and whatnot, that if we can allay those concerns right off the bat, then as I'd mentioned earlier, that can allow for a better streamlining of the consultation process, because we won't be dealing with 1,000 people with 500 questions. We're dealing with 1,000 people with 10 questions, or however that turns out to be. But we need to do a different job on this to do this process justice.
Other comments? Councillor Royale and then Councillor Roberts.
One of the biggest things too that I've been dealing with, and I understand we have a lot of strong people that are for this thing and a lot of strong people that are against it, and both groups have very good reasons for why they are where they are. But a lot of the questions that I'm getting are related to how's it going to work, and all the exemptions and the things that are mandatory and prioritory and all that kind of stuff. So my question was, we are going to put together a guideline brochure pamphlet assistance after we've done it. Should it not be done in conjunction with what we're doing? So that as we define a piece, yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. We should be doing that now, building that not just FAQs, great idea, but turn that into section 1 means this, section 2 means that. Here's how it all works. And we need to have that done in concert with it, not after the fact.
It's my belief that we're talking about a communications plan now during the process. So we can inform and clarify and get the responses that we need to ultimately make whatever changes we see are required to where we land with this and in what detail. So that's kind of what we're trying to get at, Cease, is what we need to do now while we're in the consultation process, not after. I mean, of course, there would have to be something in place once the bylaw is adopted and in place. Here's what this means. Andrea, did I see your hand up? Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Warden. So I don't disagree with having that FAQ, and I did see what Algonquin Highlands had been sent to me, so I appreciated that, and it was very clear and concise, and it's in plain language so people can understand what the comments is. But all of that is based on the draft bylaw as presented right now. So I am still puzzled as I was 2 weeks ago, and will continue to be sort of it. And maybe I'm leaping way ahead, and I know we have some other agenda items, so I could hold this thought. But what happens after that? So we put it out as the draft is sitting right now. People read and the bylaw, but they also read the plain language. They can see if they have a existing cottage that is sitting at 20 meters, it means this. I just still don't, I'm confused of what our process is going to be to say, let's call it a draft 3. How do we get from listening to all those questions and comments to the next step?
I think that we need to hear and consolidate the concerns based on what we've got now in order to be able to make the next round of changes that we might make. That's just my thinking. I know that there's been a couple of thoughts about, well, maybe we should be making changes to the bylaw now. But I think we've got a lot more to hear and hone in on about what are really truly valid concerns. And in order to do that, we need to provide some clarification about what's meant in this draft. Charlesie, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Warden. If I could just add some information to both what Councillor Moffat was speaking to, as well as Councillor Royale, and then also Councillor Roberts. First, the FAQ, I believe that was discussed previously, and my direction was to, yes, create that FAQ and that it was to be a fluid document put on the website so that it would be added to as we move through. And it is included as one of the resource documents to the report after this. And yes, I also have those emails as well, and a continuing list of those questions where, when asked similar questions, combining them together. So, it's one question, not 6. And yes, that would be continually updated. The high level or Coles Note document, we have the proposed 4-page, which is a high level summary of what can and cannot be done. But we can absolutely add to communication plan or direction from council to create maybe more of a, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Royale, a case study idea. So if my property is X and I want to do Y, how does this bylaw impact me? And then lastly, to Councillor Roberts, I believe, yes, once we have the comments and some really great constructive ideas on changes or things that we could do to improve, it would be brought back to County Council as those listed items before creating that draft 3. I would put it to County Council to direct which items they would like to see incorporated and then move forward with that draft 3. That would be my recommendation. But again, if County Council would like the process in a different order, absolutely happy to discuss that.
Thoughts at this point? Councillor Moffat?
Thank you again. So my concern is that I don't feel that County Council is having enough conversation about this. And I think it's evidenced in, the faces on the screen today. I seem to be the blabbermouth today. I appreciate the purpose of the communication plan and the work that went into it. And I almost feel like that we're spending more time on a communication plan, as in those 8 slides, than we are with getting something done. Like, let's get on it. Let's get to it. And so in a lot of our other projects, we've seen Gantt charts. And I don't remember, we may have seen one earlier, like a year ago. But I think that's also what's concerning the public, is there's a lot of people who think this is still a done deal by April. First of all, it's not a done deal. April's impossible by now. And I think there's some things like that we need to say out loud that would also, assuage some of the public concern. And I think we need to say some of them out loud. And I have some notes. I'm prepared to do some of that. And I think what's the feeling in the public is that we're not making enough decisions to give staff the right, and I feel the same way. We're not making enough decisions to give staff the direction that speaks directly to what the public is telling us, which is then continuing to just feed into this crazy circle. So I think we need, at the very least, some sort of, comprehensive FAQ. The 1-pager is only okay. I mean, the copy that's been provided, again, I've got red marks all over it. Sorry, not sorry. And we need to have a conversation around if Charles or whomever is going to go and speak to who's she going to go and speak to? So she's going to go and talk to the home builders. Great. Who else? And who's going to go with her? Is it in the evenings? Is it on a weekend? Additionally, if this process is going to be slowed down a bit and it might drift into the summertime, one consultation opportunity is not going to be enough, because if there are, depending on the weather, if folks can't weigh in, you're going to end up in construction season. And we talked last year about making sure we had a special date for people who were working in the construction and landscaping industry, because they would suddenly be very busy and perhaps not able to participate. They can right now. So these are the kinds of things that are floating around my head, is the when, the how, the why, and the who. And I feel like we're going in circles around that. And where's our launch point? That's where we need to get to, but we need to get to the launch point with a very firm timeline. First this, then that, then the other.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I know that one of the things that, you talked about meeting with special groups, interest groups. I mean, we know that there are a number of groups, and Charles's listed some of them that would benefit from having a meeting. I know that there's different schools of thought about that. I find myself thinking that it might be at this stage in time better to let Charlesy hold the meetings with the groups that we see that are appropriate. I'm thinking of trying to ensure that we're keeping it apolitical, factual about where we stand. You know, I'm concerned that some of us could be, you know, influenced one way or another for, you know, for reasons outside of the bylaw. It's just my thought that keeping those meetings apolitical might be a good idea, but obviously there might be different thoughts on that. And it just before I go to you, Councillor Roberts, I did want to say that to me, it's obvious that the timing, like April the 1st is out. I'm even starting to, although I'm sad to say that it could be mid-year, it could be longer than that, because we want to get it right. We want to get the information out there, make sure people understand the details. And if it takes us longer, it takes us longer. And there's no issue in my mind about that. One of the things that, you know, I'm not sure about the timing to, you know, to meet the needs of the construction season. But to me, there's definitely going to be more than one town hall meeting. You know, if we look at the massive number of emails that we're receiving from people, it's indicative of the level of interest. Now, some of them can be responded to easily because they're misunderstanding things. But I suspect that we may have to have more than one town hall meeting. You know, we'll need to agree on how much time everybody gets, but we need to be prepared to do it, you know, 2 or maybe even 3 times to allow the input that we're saying to people that they should get. I know that Cease mentioned pamphlets, and I guess that we would have to consider that because not everybody is internet savvy. We need to consider more than just, you know, FAQs on the internet. You know, there's got to be a way to provide that information in other formats as well. Okay, next is Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Warden. So I would just like to comment on some of the emails and comments that I have been receiving since our meeting 2 weeks ago, and the tone has changed. They're very respectful for the most part. They're informed. When I do reply, if I'm able to, I direct them back to the county website. That goes to the comment that I made 2 weeks ago about us taking the lead on communicating. So it's much appreciated that as I say, the comments are respectful and people are trying to get their points across. But I have a bit of a point of order, if I may ask the clerk. We did receive a notice of motion at the end of our regular county council meeting just at noon, and then something was sent to us. At what opportunity during the meeting today are we going to, or is that later go? So if you could,
Just to provide a little bit of clarity on that, I spoke with both Councillor Kennedy and our clerk about, you know, the best way to approach this, and it is up to Councillor Kennedy, who wants to put the motion forward, to do that whenever he wants. However, I had suggested that there might be some benefit to having a bit of conversation first on these items, because I believe that some of the things that he is suggesting, should his motion pass, we're already working on. We're already doing a lot of these things, and if we can agree, that's fine. If we need to step back and set, you know, like in order to get the right FAQs out that would satisfy everybody, do we need to set a little working group of our own to work on that piece of it, or do we just provide input? You know, there's some discussion with respect to that. It's been left open for that motion to be brought forward at whatever point. I mean, it's in Councillor Kennedy's hands to do that. I would just ask Mike to maybe comment on that first.
I think you've captured it. I don't really have anything to add.
Councillor Kennedy?
Yeah, and I thank you, Madam Warden, and for the opportunity to put that, to give council advance notice of that motion. And further to our discussions, that I'm more than willing to let the discussion go today. And if my motion gets tabled towards the end, that's fine, after we've had a good hearty discussion on this. Or if somebody calls for the motion, then that's fine too. I can read it at that point. So I'm quite flexible in it. As far as the discussion, and I'd like to hear from councillors, and maybe there's a happy medium, as you say, somewhere in between.
I mean, it's absolutely, there's little doubt that, you know, if you want to put the motion on the floor at this point in time, it will generate no small amount of conversation, you know, before there's a vote. So, you know, I mean, if you want to go there now, I don't have any issue with that. It's, as I said, it is your motion, or anyone's place really to call for the motion.
Okay, well then let's get it on the table and go from there.
Just one comment. I see Councillor Moffat's hand up. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say the same things over and over again. So with little bits added, never mind, carry on.
Councillor DeVolen, did you have a comment? Okay. Go ahead.
I hereby move that council postpones further discussion on the draft shoreline preservation bylaw until such time as a committee is struck by council with a mandate to undertake the necessary research to develop and present recommendations for county council consideration. And if I could have a recorded vote on that, is that possible? Is that within the purview?
Yeah, yes, and although there will be discussion before the vote's taken. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roberts, is that your intention? Okay. All right, discussion. Councillor Moffat, then Councillor DeVolen, then Councillor Rael.
Thank you. I'll reiterate what I said before. I appreciate that we absolutely need to clarify this process. I do not support a committee of the public, because I believe that we are so far down the vitriolic blame game that it would be impossible to adequately or usefully represent all interested parties without making it even worse. And in comparison, I think that a recalibration of a more robust and inclusive consultation process would do just as much. Unless we went to RFP, I said that last time too. If we were going to bring in outside persons to take this over, I would only support it being an RFP.
Councillor DeVolen.
Thank you for putting this on the floor. Councillor Kennedy, I have said nothing to date because it was the elephant in the room, and was going to not comment until it was on the floor. I'm of mixed minds with this. We've seen a lot of polarization of views and tactics and a bunch of things, and I'm doing my best to put that all away and to keep my eye on the ball for the best outcomes. You know, in one mind, it's about advocating responsibilities and that sort of challenge, and the other part of it is to give accommodation so that we come to consensus, or what's close to consensus, and move forward. I wish I'd had a little more time to see and think through all the elements of this before today. I would say that whichever way it went, your proposal or what Councillor Moffat, I'm not going to die on the hill either way. I see the benefits of it, but I'm concerned about when we create committees, what happens. Then I get to questions, Mike, with respect to the clerk style question is, under the Municipal Act and how many, if we have appropriate council representation and majority, you know, that I'm getting down into some of the sub elements, but we haven't really done this here much. And just there's some nuts and bolts of logistics that I'm not sure at this point whether you can comment on that. I presume that you've been presented with this beforehand to think about. So, but it is the elephant in the room, and in that sense, regardless of what way this works out, I'm glad to have this part of it, that we have our conversations, and whether it's an arm wrestle or whatever, and where the chips fall where they may, then I'm prepared to move forward with it, not knowing at this second which way I'm likely inclined to say yay or nay on. And I don't know if you can comment at this point, Mike, or not, with respect to things about if we create bodies of council and the municipal act and all that sort of stuff.
From an insurance perspective, if you're making it a committee of council, I think that it would be best to have at least one member of county council sit on it. But other than that, I'm really not sure that there are any requirements that contained in the municipal act that would guide it. Really, you'd be setting up a subcommittee. You'd be deciding who is represented on that committee, and then they would be reporting to county council with recommendations. Ultimately, the decision making would be with county council, no question. But as I say, my understanding is that you know, in order to ensure that the members are protected from a liability standpoint, there should be at least some political representation on the committee.
I had one question about what's intended when you say put a hold on the process. I'm pleased to hear that, you know, hold or no hold, that but we're still in a position to be moving forward and working and looking at you know, a variety of different areas, as opposed to stopping the process and in its tracks, which I don't think any of us really want to do. Councillor Royale, I think you were next for comment, and then Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, again, a little bit like Councillor Moffat, I get stuck on a specific focal point, and then I kind of have a hard time leaving there. But in my particular case, it's got a lot to do with more so how this thing is going to be put into force after the fact. I mean, we've talked about communicating with the people to get the content of it, to get the scope of it, to get all the things that are required as to whether it should be 30-meter setback, 20-meter setback, all very, very important things. And then we talked about the possibility of a Gantt chart, which basically states how long it's going to take to do something and what steps we're going to follow through. And that's a good thing too. What I've been trying to focus on with the cases that I've been bringing forward with examples is the flow chart that is going to be required to resolve each of those situations. So if I have a specific case, where do I start? I'm Mr. or Mrs. Public, and where do I start? How do I get this whole thing going? So that's the first step in the flow chart. Then maybe I have to decide, is it category 1 type of implementation, category 2, category 3, category 4? And depending on the severity and scope of what's in those various categories, I may have a different line that I have to follow in order to get the information that I need. In the case where it's minor, it's probably nothing, just validation that yes, I'm following the self-assessment program, and yes, I have been able to be compliant. And then I move into the next section, and I move into the next one. So at what point in time do I now need to bring in various documents, to consult with various people? How much of it is going to be supplied by the county versus how much do I have to get on my own? Are there checkpoint Charlies along the way that I have to check into? Sub-reports that need to be dealt with? Again, this would probably happen in a major, more complicated thing. And the other thing that nobody's spoken about is what's the role of the current lower tier? Are we in it at all? I mean, are we in this thing at all now? Or where are we going with this thing? So I have a real problem with how this is going to happen. So if by going with what Councillor Kennedy is saying, I can get a better idea for that, then that's what I'd like to see. Having said that, I'm not sure about the idea of the committee and getting into the weeds of what all that's going to be about. But the people that I represent have basically came to me and said, how is this thing going to work? And at the end of the day, how are we going to resolve the following situations, giving me several situations to deal with. And I do not have the answers. And that's what I'm looking for. Anything that'll give me those answers for those people.
I believe that some of the answers are there. Some of them are being worked on. I do like the idea of a Gantt chart or a chart that kind of shows the flow of, you know, makes it easy for people to see what the process is. We'll go next to Councillor Roberts. Hear your comments.
Thank you. So I did support this back in March last year. I mentioned it again 2 weeks ago. And so I am most definitely in support of an advisory committee. Other levels of government rely on experts outside of their own elected officials to work on these types of things. I'm not 100% sure. Councillor, our Deputy Warden Kennedy has added some comment in his notice of motion that we received, and in terms of the makeup. And I would like to feel that we definitely need a staff member. So I would suggest that Charles E. would be on it. I also feel that we would need in the RFP, or how we're putting it out for members to participate, would be that we would need one person who would act as the facilitator only, as a no comment, as the person who is the listener and the keep the order, where they're not coming in with any particular bias. And that takes the leadership role not on Charles E. Charles E. would be in an advisory role and as a staff member for note taking and there. But I would like to see somebody in the position specifically as the facilitator. And I don't know if we want to limit by a hard number the amount of people. I would rather wait till we get applications if this motion passes, as we're still in the discussion phase, and then go while we're in closed session, talking about identifiable individuals and select a group of people that we think would best represent all the different voices and things that we're hearing. I do not expect that this advisory committee is in the actual bylaw writing process. I would hope that their recommendations would then we could be, through staff, write the actual bylaw. They would get the intent and the purpose back on track. And so that's what I would think, that they wouldn't physically actually write the bylaw, that they would make recommendations to county council. But so hopefully that was clear.
Council, I'm just thinking about whether it was clear or not. Sorry, but I mean, there's so many questions that we could raise that, and I'd like to go to Councillor Moffat next rather than comment myself right now. Go ahead, Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I think one of the things we need to keep in mind, I believe this is an issue of rebuilding public trust, because there is so much confusion out there, and at the moment, nobody trusts anybody in the community. And this is features heavily in my reiteration of a neutral third party being the only way to go. I believe that if we, with all best intentions, create a committee that involves us selecting people, that's not gonna take away the suspicion that that people are being cherry picked or hand picked, or that they're going to come with bias. And to me, at the moment, the most important thing we need to do is neutralize the conversation so that it's about facts. And I don't see that a committee of community members, or even just members of the public, is going to do that. I think that's just asking for more trouble in an already troubled water.
Councillor Schell, then Councillor Kennedy.
That would be my fear too, is that, we get members of the public, but then we're accused of not having the proper representation, or, not each stakeholder has a voice because we've chosen so-and-so to be on the committee, but we didn't choose somebody else. And that concerns me as well. And I think I like Carol's idea more about maybe going to RFP and have somebody professional aside that doesn't have a personal vested interest in this, could give us more clarification.
At the same time, I think that a lot of the concerns that we're hearing are because of lack of clarity, lack of understanding about what the intent is. I'm quite sure that there are people that are voicing concerns and fears who haven't read the bylaw or the material that's included. I really believe that we need to work very hard in getting clear answers out to the public on the bulk of the questions that we're getting. It's possible that we need to create a small working group of our own, of those members of council who are committed to putting a little bit more work into this, to work on those FAQs or Q&As. Councillor Shell, then Councillor Moffat.
Just supplemental to that. And when I said RFP for someone, my thoughts are that, I mean, Charles already has a huge job. So maybe somebody that could come in and create that document that Councillor Moffat's talking about, that is a, FAQ, whereas members of county council and Charles herself can give her the questions or give he or she the questions that we've been asked to make it clear for the public. Again, I'm not going to, I like Councillor DeVoe, and I won't die on it either way, but I'm concerned about involving members of the public and then not involving all members of the public.
Or the right members of the
Or
public.
the right members of the public.
Who are the right members of the public?
Exactly. And I mean, not that I don't think they should have a say, because that's what public meetings are for. And, we're interested in these emails that we received and giving the public the answers to the questions asked in the emails. But I just want to make sure that we do it clearly and not overwhelming for staff as well.
Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Kennedy.
Following our conversation as a result of my lengthy email of frustration to you last week, Madam Warden, you did give me the green light, and I have in front of me a 15-page document that includes virtually every question we've been asked so far. I went back through all the emails. I went through the FAQ or the Q&A that Charles provided as a result of council's questions last fall. It was not onerous. I think providing the answers will be onerous, and vetting it down to a
workable document,
more of a bite-sized document will be the work. But I imagine that the answers to the questions we've been asked, they will simply fall out of Charles's head because she's so familiar with all of this. And I agree with Councillor Shell. I think that we need to get the public off of Facebook, and we need to get them into our information portal to bring clarity to the process. And so we need to populate the portal. And that's the very first step. A committee could be part of that, but if we can work toward populating our portal now and also sort out if there's going to be a committee or an advisor or a consultant or whatever it is, at least I would feel that we're doing something. I just feel like we are kind of spinning our wheels. We're getting there today, but it's certainly is a process.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Kennedy.
Well, just to give you some background, I also have read the 150 plus emails, and a lot of them that are just cut and paste I don't pay much attention to. But increasingly, we've been getting some very, very good responses from some very smart people who have an interest in both the health of our lakes, but also in their own private property and the use of it. So what I was doing is getting more and more confused, quite frankly. And so that's why I'd like somebody else to take a look and at least present us with some of the options. We've only been given one side. Like, let's use the 30 meters as an example. Let's take that as an example. That's been the standard that we're going forward with. And yet now I see we get reports back from some very qualified people, including professors, saying that 30 meters may not be the exact thing, and they have to take other things into consideration. So now you get more and more confused. So we're going to whitewash this whole 800 lakes with one paintbrush. And then we get other people that have sent me jurisdictional shoreline protection stuff that actually takes it on a lake by lake basis, where warm water lakes, where the natural barrier is a little bit less, 10 meters, for example, or 5 meters. There's a variety of them. Lake trout lakes not at capacity, a little bit tougher rules. Lake trout lakes at capacity, the toughest rules. They've also got water quality standards that they're using to factor into it. So this is what I'm finding, is that I'd like to see more of a comparison of here's what other jurisdictions are doing. Here's what some of the rules are. Also to determine specifically protection zones, what's included in it. And then just that's where I'm going with this. And when I read the bylaw, which is now changed again in 2021, there's been changes made. yes, yeah, when you take it word by word, here you've changed the fish habitat to expand it further. You've included minor site alterations. These are changes, as I guess, as a result of earlier. It would have been nice to have them highlighted, but there's still things in here that are very, very ambiguous. When I see the one pager that says Shoreline self-assessment and reporting tool, you go down there and you can do this, this, and this on your property within 30 meters, but you don't have the caveat in there unless there's fish habitat, which is on 4F page 11, which is within 30 meters. Well, fish habitat, you've expanded it and rather than narrowed the definition to expand now everywhere where fish swims. So in theory, to me, it may not be right, but that's my interpretation. That's where I'm getting at the ambiguity that seems to be contained in this bylaw. And it's not a reflection on staff. I think it's I'm throwing my hands up. I need some help on this. I'm not a planner. I'm not a fish biologist. I'm not a lawyer. I'm trying to make the best decisions and recommendations I can. I don't feel I have the tools. Well, whatever, if it's an RFP, that's even, I would support that. Sorry.
I would look to Charlesie to respond to some of that, because I believe that, that she hasn't just created this document out of her head.
I know.
And I think that there's, been a considerable amount of work that's gone into it. Did we anticipate that we'd have this extent of miscommunication and misunderstanding? I don't think any of us expected, this. I'm not sure what word to use. But Charlesie, have you got any comment that you want to make at this point in time, or should we continue?
No, just the only comment I would make is that those changes were brought forward in a red line document. Don't know the date off the top of my head, so I apologize. And
at our request.
Yes, at your request. That's all.
I haven't seen a red line document then.
We did get one, and I'm not sure at which meeting it was at, but Councillor Rael?
Yeah, like Councillor Kennedy is saying, I've had contact with people who the scary part is they are so passionate about protecting the shoreline and in a genuine interest. They're not lobbying one way or the other. They're not for or against a bylaw. They basically want to see as much intelligent protection as we can, and they have the same challenges that Councillor Kennedy's people have, slightly different issues, more so in my case related to how the thing is going to work. But a lot of the things that Councillor Kennedy said came up in conversations that I had as well, and like Councillor Kennedy, I don't have the answers. I don't even profess to be close to wise enough to be able to advise people on some of the stuff. Like, should it be 30 meters or not? I haven't got the slightest clue. But I do believe that if we were to bring in, I think as Councillor Moffat is saying, an objective group of people who have nothing at stake except providing us with a solid representation of what's needed for our particular situation. And it's absolutely not to detract from what Charlesie's done. And if it's being taken that way, then that's all wrong. I think based on the pressure that Charlesie's had, she is doing what I believe to be an awesome job. I mean, you're almost in a no-win situation here. There's lobbyists all over the bloody place. There's councillors going all over the place. And here's Charlesie stuck in the middle trying to make it all work. So God bless her for that. But I think that we're probably getting into an area where we do need some outside help, and I think a combination of what Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Moffat are saying is where we should go.
I'm not sure Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Moffat are saying the same thing. As a matter of fact, I'm not hearing. There's some similarities, but it's not exactly the same. Councillor Moffat.
I believe that a neutral third party would still be able to take all the work that's been done to date, which I would concur with, thanks, and also to consult the people that have been mentioned. We are getting good response recently. We're getting some very thoughtful response and some suggestions, and there's a lot of good ideas out there. So going with a neutral third party does not in any way preclude any person or group. It actually could prove to include more, because we can provide a list of people we know who could be met with, instead of the planner going out in an evening to meet with the home builders, for example. Then that neutral third party would still go and collect all that information from those people that are in our community, but that the process is not being run by the people in our community. And I think that's the key difference here.
Further comment at this point, Councillor Kennedy.
I really like the idea of the independent third party as a compromise. I think it's an excellent suggestion. A committee, I know is troublesome, whether it be just a committee of councillors, which is one of the options I had laid out, and or if it felt necessary, members of the public. It does have that caveat at the bottom. But the bringing in of an independent third party, I think, will lend credibility to the whole process. And I would fully support and or modify my motion to reflect that. Or if Councillor Moffat wishes to make a different, I would rescind my motion and support Councillor Moffat's motion if she were to make such a motion to move to an RFP process.
Any other thoughts on that? I haven't heard anything from Councillor Burton. I'd like to hear again from Councillor DeVolen.
Thank you, and I would certainly support the third party. I guess my question or concern, not that they were in any hurry, but what would be the time frame on this? Like, would it be a couple months, or would it be a couple weeks?
Well, I think you heard that suggestion that, or Carol's comment that that we would have to put out an RFP to have this done, and there are specific timeframes that would have to be put to that. I mean, you need to give people an opportunity to respond. I don't know what the minimum time, turnaround time would best be on that. But that would sort of, and we'd need to set a time frame within which whatever agreed upon work that we ask them to do will be done. And I think that there's a lot more discussion about that. Should we go in that direction? I mean, we seem to be settling on two different things here. We continue on our own as we are with the plans that Charles is laying out and discuss each one of them, or that we decide that we're going to go with an RFP and have some I don't want to use the word consultant, facilitator, whatever you want to call it, to work on this. And I see that as opposed to setting up a citizen committee. Councillor Moffat?
I believe Councillor Kennedy has offered to either rescind or modify his motion. And so I'm not sure what the process is for that, whether the mover and seconder, whether you have to call the vote as defeated or it's just pulled off the table. I don't know what that looks like. So do we need to do that first, Mr. Process Man?
I assume you mean me. If the mover and seconder agree to withdraw their motion, then you can essentially withdraw it and start again.
Or amend the motion, as opposed to saying an independent committee, to say an RFP be developed. Thoughts? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Moffat?
So I did second the motion as it was read, and I do now with this new idea of just one independent person as opposed to a group of people. I am now more confused about how that would work. What would be the expectation where we have just one neutral person? Are we asking them to read all this information and come back to us with suggestions? Are they going to work with county council? Like, I actually still support the idea of a committee, because I said that in March and I said that 2 weeks ago. I know that there are people that have reached out to me in the past few weeks and months, actually, who have offered their services. I would suggest that we do that as we do for any committee. We do an advertisement. People have to apply with their qualifications, and we pick a number of people. And as I thought it was clear earlier, that we also ask in the application process that one person or someone apply for the facilitator role. I still think we'll be better with a group than one individual. I'm not sure what guidance we would give them. So I don't want to rescind my second.
Councillor Moffat.
It wouldn't be my expectation that we would hire Frank to go around and chat to some folks. It would be my expectation that we would have a firm of some sort that has people who are knowledgeable. We would write the RFP to reflect the needs in terms of what Councillor Kennedy has said, that other than notwithstanding our own planner, none of us are planners or lawyers or engineers or biologists or scientists. And so we would write the RFP to reflect those needs, and that firm would provide the leadership to go around and talk to all the various groups and then tell us where we are and maybe aren't on the mark in regional comparators, best practice, scientific justification for various points. There's a lot of division. Just like none of us or have any of those professional standings, neither does the majority of the public. And so there needs to be a very serious separating of the wheat from the chaff here, so that we can focus on, I keep poor old Mildred, but not Mildred in her garden, but the bigger issues that are rising to the top as the most contentious or misunderstood ones. And so to me, it's not, to Councillor Roberts' point, it's not just picking Frank to go and talk to some people. It's an RFP that will elicit appropriate responses from the appropriately qualified firms to see these specifics through to fruition for us.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing and seeing nods that are leaning more towards an RFP. I think we can achieve the same goals through that. I think that's possibly a bit of a compromise between the committee and us just trying to forge ahead on our own. Sometimes blindly. Now, I do not include Charles in that comment, but we've all been asked to answer questions that, for the most part, I've been able to answer any inquiries that I've got, or respond or direct a person in the right way. But there have been some emails that have come to me that I thought, oh my God, I'm not sure. It depends, and on where we land in the end. I had said that I wanted to hear again from Councillor DeVolen, so looking for some thoughts there. I just want us all to weigh in on this and the direction that we're going to go before we land on a motion and how it will be decided.
I just, with respect to an RFP approach, Mike, to create, form it, and put it out and come back and respond, the process for that alone would take some months. Would I be correct?
From start to finish, you mean?
Well, just to put the frames of reference, to send it out, to get it back, to do the selection, and then this is kind of, I'll tell you what, I'll go through this and then explain the why. The reality is, and we're in COVID, so just add another dimension there. If we embark upon this, kind of by definition, we won't come to any fruition with respect to this year's building season. I'm not saying that that's the end of the world to me, but just realize that the path that we're considering, that's the implications of it. Just want that out there for us to be fair and whatever, just to know that if we choose that path, and I'm not saying we shouldn't choose that path, and I am encouraged by Councillors Moffat and Deputy Warden Kennedy, is that we're seeing the spirit of compromise here. I think our interests are aligned. It's how we think that we get there, and the 8 of us that are here are representative of the divergence of opinions that we have in our public. So in that sense, we're representative of them. But I just wanted on the record that I think that if we do that, that'll be the outcome. I'll come back to a comment I made when we meet previously. We have 2 years left, less than 2 years left in the term of council. We need to get our business done. We just need to realize the realities of time frame and to execute this stuff. And the flip side of that, which I'm sure we'll get, you know, the number of blue algae blooms that we had this year, the time's ticking away, and that's the other part. And I'm not saying there's getting it right versus doing it when what seems in some way a more timely fashion, and it's difficult maybe to achieve those objectives somewhat at the same time. So anyways, just my thoughts. I'm still the wheels are still going in my you evaporated on me. The wheels are still going in my head. Thanks for just that I could take.
Okay, 2 things. I one comment that one of the people who called actually picked up the phone and talked to me about this in some great detail. And I confess it was a person who was in support of the document, but they said, you know, I may not get it exactly right. Don't pit perfect against better. And you know, to me, that spoke to me, that we do need a document to help guide this, but we all need to remember that it's a living document, that you know, we're going to have to try something out at some point in time and see how it works. It doesn't mean that we can't change it, amend it. You know, it's like our procedural bylaw. It guides how we act, or how we perform and act, and yet we can change it. So just having said that little bit, that's totally off the cuff. I guess we're set with voting on the motion as it's put forward, and that's the highlighted portion of what Pat has submitted to us, considering that we're going to go with an independent committee, as Andrea has outlined. And we can vote for or against that. If that motion fails, then we can put forward another motion that suggests that we go with an RFP process. And obviously that's going to have to come with you know, some input from council as to what exactly we would like to see included in that. Does that sound reasonable? So would you like, Carol, go ahead, sorry, Councillor Moffat.
That's okay, Liz. Is that the way that we should go? I'll go back to the clerk. Does it, if the mover and the seconder are willing to pull, oh, actually, sorry, the seconder is not willing. So that's fair. Right. Yep. I'm with you now.
Councillor Roberts.
But I'm only the seconder. If the mover has withdrawn, then I would have to so move, I believe. So if the mover withdraws the motion's withdrawn, we don't vote. But again, Robert's rules.
Well, and there's also a third option of amending the resolution and seeing if you would agree with that. Because it sounded like Pat was willing to consider a different resolution. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I would withdraw my motion on the caveat that there is a motion coming forward to put out an RFP to a professional body to review and make recommendations back to council.
Okay. We'll go with our CAO first and then Councillor Moffat.
So Councillor Roberts is right then. So ultimately then, as the seconder of the motion, she can decide if she wants to move it, see if there's another seconder. And if you can get a seconder for the motion, then it could be put back on the table for consideration. And then failing that, if it fails, then you could move to another motion.
Just a comment from Councillor Moffat and then back to you, Councillor Roberts.
I was going to suggest different wording for the motion, so the other part should happen first. Go back to
Councillor Roberts. Do you wish to be the mover and see if there's a seconder?
I do not think that there is support for the motion as it's written, so I will not move.
Okay.
So it,
So we would then, it's my understanding that we would then look for a resolution that says that we would seek to develop an RFP to assist us with communications and information, including consultations. Councillor Moffat?
I'm willing to put that forward. I would like the language to say that I'm looking, I have it open, Pat's resolution in front of me, talks about postponing. I would prefer to use the language that council redirects the discussion.
Yeah.
On the shoreline preservation bylaw until such time as an RFP can be developed with a mandate to, I don't know, take it from here. That's not very professional language, but away you go.
I've drafted something, but again, please, if I didn't get so that council redirects. So be it resolved that council redirects further discussion on the draft shoreline preservation bylaw, and that staff be directed to develop a draft RFP for council's consideration to retain consulting services. I know you didn't like that, Liz, but I'm not sure anything else, another word to use, but feel free to fill in. To lead the development of a shoreline preservation bylaw draft, which would include a review of the related science, an environmental scan of what others are doing, and public consultation. Does that capture what you had in mind?
Does that capture what everybody's got in mind? I'm seeing nods. Councillor Ryal?
If that is to assume that my unfortunate stubbornness has been included in the way that's paraphrased, I'm good. Which is the actual working of it.
Okay.
I didn't specifically reference Councillor Ryle's stubbornness, but
I think we should put that in there. Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Thank you.
did you want me to read it again?
Yes, please.
That council redirects further discussion on the draft shoreline preservation bylaw and direct staff to develop a draft RFP for council's consideration to retain consulting services to lead the development of a draft shoreline preservation bylaw, including a review of the related science, an environmental scan, and public consultation.
Councillor Moffat?
At the risk of eliciting some angry emails, is there any way in an RFP to ensure or include a, I'm recalling something from a previous process we just went through, a conflict or bias component to it? Was that where any potential conflict would need to be disclosed by the submitter? Is that?
I was wondering about putting in the word independent. I'm sorry, the word has just gone right out of my head. Councillor Roberts and then Councillor DeVolen.
just like neutral, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly neutral, but it was a word, something in that not unbiased, but yeah, a neutral party. Go ahead, Councillor Mike. Sorry.
I guess my intention in the resolution is that the draft RFP would come to council for your review, and those kinds of clauses, which I do think would be very relevant, could be included in the draft RFP. So as council review that, that's something that could be included in that document. But my intention would be to bring that draft RFP to council before it is released.
Okay, any other comments or questions before we call a vote on that? Councillor Moffat.
I promise this is my last. I know it's not my role to thank staff. I'm not the chair, but I think it's important to, as has been mentioned, just to reassure Charlesy, this is not a slight at you. And I know you don't think it is because you're very linear about your job, which is great. But I feel like it's become a bit of an unfair burden on Charlesy, and certainly in the conversations we've had with the the number of projects facing the planning department. I think we're better served with Charlesy being a significant contributor and resource for this process rather than having, to carry the burden of the world on this issue herself. So I hope that it's seen as helping as opposed to hindering or in any way diminishing.
Thank you. I would have said exactly the same thing, and that's why I made some comments when we went into this discussion. It's difficult. I know that Councillor Roberts earlier said that the bulk of the emails that we're receiving more recently have become more respectful and specific in pointers about what we're proposing, but they aren't all like that. There's still some rather nasty wordage and suggestions, some veiled threats, and that sort of thing is very difficult for any of us. But I don't want Charlesy to have to be the bear the burden of that sort of behavior either. I'm just looking for respectful input from everybody, and again, like I've said it many times, we want to get this right, and I hope that process will help to do that. Well, you promised.
Sorry. I think it's really important to point out as well, though, that just going back to what you just said, is there have been a lot of really crummy things said, but not necessarily to us or against us. There's a preposterous amount of crummy things being said by lots of different people about lots of different people. So this is a community in the process of unraveling around this issue, and it's sad to see people saying, I'll never use that contractor, and and I'll never use that person, and people didn't like the editorial in one of the newspapers, so they didn't put any ads in the paper, and that's cannibalization of our own community, and that's what needs to stop. We don't have to agree on how we get there, but it's the respectful discourse is how we undertake our business. And the fact that there's so many people saying so many terrible things about so many people in our community is outrageous, and it's been very disappointing. So,
well, and it's not helped by being in the middle of a pandemic, having pandemic fatigue, marching into February, the darkest month of the year. It's just not helped. Councillor Roberts, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Just thank you. Well, we're still just having a little bit of debate before the vote. I just want to keep in mind there will be a financial implication for this. The suggestion that was brought forward before that I was referring to, or people are offering their services and their contributions for free because they're members of the community and they live here and had expertise. There will be a financial implication, but I suppose we'll wait to see when this RFP comes forward and applicants come in, what kind of money we're talking about. We do have money in the budget for the Shoreline bylaw for this year. But that's just something to remember.
No, point well taken. Even in the discussion that we had earlier about the need for advertising and, so media promotion of certain aspects of it that, we need to make sure that we're covered. Okay, so I think I'd like to call for the vote on the motion that has been presented to us. All in favor? Thank you. We're unanimous in that. So I would suggest that sort of precludes us from, continuing to go through the rest of the documentation here for now. Charlesy?
Sorry, and if I could, through you, Madam Warden, just some direction to staff with regards to the date that has been set for that public meeting and how you wish me to address that.
Well, that's a good question. We've got almost, well, a month and 3/4 before then, and I'm not sure that we've got enough. Is that enough time? I think we're going to have to defer that. Really, it's just not enough time for an RFP to be put out and responded to, decided upon, and I think we all know that this is going to, in a way. I don't want to use the word postpone, but kind of just take a little step back. And it's going to take more time, and everybody's going to have to be patient with that. So if that sounds all right, I think we need to just cancel the meeting for now. And at the earliest possible date that we can start to look at a new series of meetings and consultations. That sound all right? Any other questions or comments at this time? So we had resolutions prepared for the 3 reports that Charles E. had submitted. I guess we just defer them, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that anybody wants to say about this at this time? I mean, obviously, we're going to have more conversations about the process that we're about to enter into. So I guess I would look to our next meeting to hear any updates on where we stand with that. Sound okay? So we do have a confirming bylaw. If there are no further comments, I would look for a mover and a seconder to pass the confirming bylaw. Councillor Shell and Councillor DeBolen.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor DeBolen. Be it resolved that bylaw 4033, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the January 27th, 2021 special meeting of Haliburton County Council, be considered to be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, and the seal of the corporation be affixed.
All in favor? Carried. And finally, a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Roberts, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the January 27th, 2021 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor? We stand adjourned. That's carried. And I'd like to thank everybody who's tuned in for doing so. The meeting may have taken a somewhat different turn than you had anticipated, but thank you for your interest.
Here, everyone, stay safe.
Yep.